recording. Yes, now everybody, good evening. Good to have you all. I'm Gaurav Yadav and I welcome you on behalf of the IPN family to this conversation today, which is part of our regular series, which we are doing it for the second year in continuation, wherein the idea is to interact with school leaders across the length and breadth of the country and get the sense of what are their top priorities with respect to the year ahead. We've done 3 sessions in this series, which is we've spoken to leaders in the North, followed by leaders in the West and leaders in the Southern context. Just for the people who are a little finicky about their geography, this is a central, North Central India conversation. I said this in the beginning that someone who is in Dehradun will certainly not find himself to be or herself to be in the Central India, right? So just for that bit, and as I mentioned to you, we will keep this a very conversational format, which is after every speaker have spoken, we will open up the house if you have any direct question or an observation to begin with. The majority of the questions, however, we'll take it at the last. So that's the way we will build this together today for you. As a matter of fact, to all my speakers who are with me today, please, if you have any aid in terms of your presentation or you want to just be with respect to any other format you want to choose, you can, certainly do that. I believe Ms. Palak has a presentation to share, which will be done by her because that's the thing which she shared with me. But
I'm so sorry, I'm not doing that.
Wonderful, wonderful. That helps in a way that if you're not doing it, fabulous, right? So as I was sharing that, I will begin with a very brief introduction to all of you. I've given the context, I've given you one more thing which I think missing out is that please, my request is with all my speakers that if we can have a precise conversation and at the max we can have 7 to 8 minutes of your time of talking and then we can take up say a couple of minutes for Q&A, that will help us to do this in a far more organized manner, right? That's the way I've seen historically worked better rather than being a one-way monologue. Okay, so let's do this. I will quickly have a brief introduction being read out. I will do that for all of us. I will begin with Mr. Roshan Gandhi. Roshan Gandhi is the CEO at the CMS Education, Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. He's a graduate from the University of Oxford with an MBA in Educational Leadership from University College London, UCL. He has also worked in and continues to consult for various educational technology companies. For the benefit of all of you, he very regularly attends and publishes a lot of educational topics on educational topics. Roshan has also led the transformational bit at the City Montessori School, which is the largest school with 57,000 students in one city, for that matter. He has actually taken up the role of CEO, I believe, only last year. So welcome, Roshan. He's a young, dynamic leader. Have met him many a times, and we will look forward to listening to you today. Roshan.
Thank you very much for having me, Gaurav. Good to see you.
I will go to my next speaker, which is Mrs. Meeta Sharma, who is at present the principal at the Mussoorie International School, Uttarakhand. Mrs. Sharma received her formative education in Australia, holds a postgraduate in education pedagogies from the Institute of Education, University College of London, UK. She is a gold medalist from the North Eastern Hill University, Shillong, Meghalaya. Obviously, she's been the head of institution at many distinguished schools in the country, and before joining in Mussoorie International, where she currently holds her position. Welcome, Meeta ji. Good to have you after a break, after a long break, I believe so. But nevertheless, we are here. You are on the mute. Yeah.
Thank you. I feel privileged being here.
Wonderful. I go to Dr. Sunita Swaraj, principal, who's joining us for the first time at IPN Conversation. Very recently, I got to interact with her. I thought, given the experience she holds, it will be wonderful having her with us. She's the principal at the Heritage School, Vasant Kunj in New Delhi. She obviously very distinguished, which I felt in her profile was she is a firm believer in the counsel from the sacred Bhagavad Gita. 16 years of very distinguished leadership role. She's been performing as a teacher and a school administrator, and she is a daughter of a defense personnel. Wonderful. Good to have you, Sunita ji.
Thank you, Gaurav. Let's just begin with this diya lamp lighting. और अगर आप यहाँ देख पा रहे हैं, ये I am abundant. It's just not me. We all are. We Indians are abundant. So to begin this, मेरी शुरुआत आपके साथ. तो ये दिए के साथ.
Thank
you.
So
धन्यवाद. It's just amazing to be here. Thank you.
I'm not sure of if she is around, but nevertheless, I'll go ahead with the introduction. Dr. Priyanka Mehta is a principal director at the Sarvottam International School in Noida. Very recently turned author, for which I believe her book is doing fabulously well. She holds a PhD in English and an MBA in HR. Headed various schools wherein she believes her hands-on school processes and as a trainer and coach has really read an impact in the Indian schooling context. So I welcome Dr. Priyanka if she's around. Good to have you with us, and we look forward to hear from you as we go along. Last but not the least, I have Ms. Palak Tiwari Gaikwad, who is again a young dynamic leader, who's the director at the Little Kingdom Group of Schools in Jabalpur, a university topper, and worked very closely as a program head in the United Nations Population Fund in the region of Madhya Pradesh. Young dynamic leader, as I mentioned, and she's been leading the institution which are based in Jabalpur, Madhya Pradesh, and she's bringing a lot of desirable changes in that region from her work in the field of education. So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for helping us do this with you. I will begin with Meeta ji, and then I'll go to Roshan, then I'll go to Mrs. Swaraj, Dr. Swaraj, and Priyanka, and then last but not the least, we'll have Ms. Palak taking over the conversation. Meeta ji, over to you. You'll have to unmute all over again. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gaurav. I would like to enumerate certain emerging trends in education post-COVID, and maybe towards the end also, speak specifically to my institute. So before I begin, thank you once again for having me over here, and I hope I make a difference to this continued conferences of yours and this topic which has been there. Firstly, I'd like to say is that the school is actually, or in fact, accelerating educational inequality is something that we are working on, and everybody, I feel, needs to work on it. And when I say educational inequality, it is basically, though people have had opportunities for education, even in institutes like ours, but the learning gaps are immense. And so there is a lot of effort that one needs to put in to, fill in these learning gaps which have emerged in a very unprecedented fashion. We never ever thought before that the pandemic would actually lead, this extended pandemic would lead to it. So that's my first point that I'd like to talk about. I'll keep it short, like you said, for 6 to 7 minutes. The second thing that I want is the trends which probably is like, it's kind of a leapfrog moment. It's been in the past 2 years, and it still continues with innovation, which has suddenly moved from the margins to the center of almost all education systems in almost all schools. And every school, including mine, is continuously trying to identify new strategies and strategies that can be sustained. We don't want to ever be in a situation whereby we have to, kind of figure out what are we going to be doing. And we want to be prepared for all possible kind of eventualities. So we're identifying new strategies. Some have been done. We're looking into other strategies that could be sustainable and can help all the young people get an education that prepares them for the changing times. The third point I'd like to talk about is about the newfound public recognition, how schools have actually are so important in society, and how the society can also be a part of good schooling. So we want to leverage this. We've been always had public support as well as parental support, but this is a time where even the parents realize that there was nothing wrong with the school, was probably wrong with the child, and they would always blame the school. So schools had been closed for quite some time, and as teachers and school leaders around the world struggled with hardly any forewarning to pivot to some form of remote learning, parents and families actually around the globe who had actually relied on schools as an anchor and went on with their lives, suddenly realized that schools were places which really needed support. And so this public recognition from parents is something that is in today's time. I find that the schools are getting more support from the parents, because parents have probably understood what it is to have a child at home and what the teachers undergo when the child is in school. I also feel that new actors in the community have come up to support schools. And so this is a change that I'm seeing. It is not just the parents who would support, but now a lot of social welfare organizations are also coming and connecting with schools, with my school, to support learning, which was never before. I mean, we would reach out to them, but now they are reaching out to us, which is really great, and which is a change that I see, which is happening. So beyond that, I would say that the need of the hour, which has always also been, is for the social and the emotional well-being of children, and a lot of work towards it. Schools always actually looked into the physical well-being. They looked into the educational and the intellectual needs, even if it was just a 8 to 2 school. But now what is even more important than these two needs, which I've just spoken about, is the social and the emotional well-being. Being at home, the children have had access to technology, which is good and bad, but their access has not been monitored in most of the cases. No firewalls, so parents could probably not know what their kids are doing. So they have come back to school in a manner where they are physically grown in terms of their chronological age, but mentally even more than the chronological age. So a lot of social and emotional counseling is required, is also the need of the hour in the years to come. The instructional core to deal with such, even in the classroom, needs a change. We are trying to forge stronger and more trusting relationship between the parents, the teachers, and we're asking the parents to come up in the open in case there have been any issues with the child that need any kind of intervention, and not just dust it like under the carpet or consider it as a white elephant in the room. Besides that, I would say a lot of work in school is also going on for inclusion as well as equality. Keeping it short, I would say we are actually embracing the principles of improvement of science required to evaluate, course correct, and document, and scale all possible new approaches that can help power up our school. We're looking into policies, and now we're looking into policies with different, of the different viewpoint. Our eyeballs are actually looking into ensuring that these policies are adapted to the changing times. So basically, if I would say that having a vision of the change that we want to see that matters and which can help guide, discuss, debate, and ultimately lead to action is our priority. Committed as we are at Mussoorie International School to inspire our students to be fearless leaders and women of integrity. I say women because we are an all-girls school. This is only possible if we look into another aspect, which is more teacher training. teacher training, not just in terms of the core competency of the teachers as far as the subject is concerned, but teacher training in terms of dealing with these youngsters who are the VUCA youngsters of the volatile, the complex, the ambiguous, the uncertain age which prevails today. So a lot of teacher training is what we are looking into. We're looking into their health, like I said, parental involvement, and social and emotional support. This is what I'd like to say in short. This is our priority at Mussoorie International School. And the heartening factor is, like I said, a lot of organizations are now joining hands with schools, and I see that very, very welcoming. Thank you, Gaurav. That's all I have to say. I hope I've kept it short.
No, wonderful. Absolutely short, crisp, and precise. If that is one thing I can begin with. Because it's an all-girls school, I can see the reflection of the partnership between the parents is such an integral part right now. I can understand that completely where you're coming from. And I think you put it a very optimistic view when I say this, because I believe there's a lot of people in the audience who will end up saying that somehow parents have also become a little more intrusive. I will say they've been a little more demanding of at least of lately to begin with. But then thank you very much. I think we'll have time for one or couple of questions. Anyone in the audience who have question for Meeta ji to begin with, you can put up a virtual show of hand. We'll help you unmute and then you can ask your question. And then we'll go to Roshan. We'll come to you after. Any question or any observation as to what Mr. Sharma said? If you have, we'll love to hear from you. Otherwise, obviously, we'll take up majority of the questions or your observation at the last. Okay, so I think there are no questions as such, Meeta ji, for that matter. So I'll hand it over to Roshan. Roshan, over to you, Mr. Roshan Gandhi. Over to you.
Hi, and thanks a lot, Gaurav, for inviting me. Always a pleasure to be in the IPN events, and I really enjoyed hearing Meeta ma'am's comments, the points there. I think, there's so many possible priorities for education that, I could completely agree with those points, and then I could have a completely different set of points at the same time. And I think, ma'am would also agree with myself. So I think that's the beauty of the education sector. So I've got a brief list of 10 key priorities. And, as I say, it's impossible to reduce such a broad spectrum of things that have to be done to 10 points or to any sort of number. But if I have to attempt, there are certain key things that are really important to me, at least. And I think, step one, the first big priority is actually just tackling the very practical problem that all schools are facing right now, which is the learning loss of the students. During all this time that they've been in and out of physical school and they've been trying to do online lessons to varying degrees of quality, there's been a huge amount of learning loss. We've seen students fall behind on their syllabuses, on their learning content, but also not just that, even in their, their way of interacting in the school, their socialization, their ability to be around peers and to express themselves. There's been, amongst many people, a step backwards. And that's been quite a disequalizing thing, because actually some kids have stepped backwards. Others, maybe they've been fortunate to be in homes that have been in a stronger economic position during the pandemic, or whatever, they've continued to flourish during the pandemic. So they've gone ahead and others have fallen behind. And so there's this great differentiation that we've ended up with amongst our students. So I think, teachers will need to redouble their efforts to tackle this problem of learning loss, which is, a massive challenge. And it's going to require a lot of individual attention, a lot of differentiated teaching, a lot of sort of targeted interventions to different students to help them all get back on track as per their own pace and ability. And I think linked to that, the second big priority that we as educators all need to look at is the well-being of our students. I think they've been through a traumatic time now for quite some time. And that manifests in very different ways. And sometimes you have students who are very obviously affected. Other times you have students who are, they're high functioning, you don't notice that they are facing problems, but actually, when we counsel them, when we really understand what they're going through, it turns out that they are having difficulties at home, or difficulties socializing, or difficulties in whatever sphere caused by all of this uncertainty that they've been going through in this past time. And I think now is, absolutely high time that the well-being of students is something that schools need to become proactive about, not just reacting to disasters when they happen amongst, children who have problems, but proactive, actively checking, ensuring that there's an infrastructure for every student to be able to find support, but also ensuring that every teacher, not just specialists, not just counselors, but every teacher has some training in being able to observe their children's behavior in the sense of their well-being, and to be able to identify problems and intervene as required. Now, a huge priority, which has been, a buzzword prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, I think now needs to stop being a buzzword and become a reality, and that is skills-based education. We've talked in countless forums for years about the 4 C's of education: creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, these being the key skills that students need to learn going forward. And I think now is the time that the pandemic has really accelerated an understanding amongst the education sector that we absolutely must make these changes, that these are the only skills that students need to have to adapt and thrive in a changing and uncertain world. And so it's now high time that schools introduce methods of teaching and learning that are conducive to this type of work. And that requires, that's so much easier said than done. That requires a massive change management agenda, and it requires changes to the curriculum and changes to assessment patterns, and a lot of support and training to teachers to be able to do that. But I think there's no excuse left for schools not to be investing the resources in making that happen. I think it's there in the NEP. It's understood as important, and it's now something that schools need to move towards. So that's a huge, big priority. And then fourth, I mentioned about the 4 C's. So I want to add 2 more C's. So the fourth and fifth priorities, apart from those skills, what are we doing about the character of our students and their sense of citizenship? I think these are really important priorities moving forward. Children need to, have a renewed sense of understanding of their place in the world, their sense of motivation for what they are doing in life, and what they want to achieve, and how they want to contribute meaningfully. How can our students be developed to become agents of positive change in their community and in the world at large? How can they be true leaders in their fields to make positive contributions in the world? So that's a matter of their sense of character and their sense of citizenship. And so global citizenship education is, a rapidly growing field, and it's something that I think a lot of schools can now start to take up. If there has to be a relook at the curriculum anyway in order to introduce skills-based education, then while relooking at the curriculum, schools should undergo a process of trying to find ways to incorporate global citizenship education into the core curriculum, so that it's not just a separate subject or a moral teaching period or something like that, but it's something that is fully integrated into the life of the school and into every lesson. So that's, these are 2 more huge priorities. I think number 6, I had talked about student well-being, but we also need to address teacher well-being. I think, teachers have just been working utterly hard this entire time, and they've been dealing with their own trauma. And teachers working from home has a whole set of nuanced challenges that teachers may face in their households and dealing with their families, and the kind of way that they've had to adapt and deal with this. And it's been relentless. There's been no opportunity for them to stop and pause and breathe and take stock and recuperate energy. And I think they've been going absolutely hard throughout this pandemic. So I think schools, school managements, school ecosystems need to now really listen to teachers, really understand, how they feel about their jobs and the kind of work they're doing, and understand how they can better support teachers to be more intrinsically motivated to feel good about their jobs and to feel positive about everything that they're doing and all the hard work that they're having to do, and maybe even to find creative ways of adjusting to make sure that teachers are not doing hard work for the wrong things, not spending their time on activities in the school which are unproductive or which could hopefully be delegated elsewhere. A lot of schools still have teachers engaging in administrative activities, in fee-related activities, in all sorts of things. And I think it's high time that schools now need to really tackle that head on, so that teachers can that teacher well-being piece can really be looked at. On the subject of teachers, as we're talking about so many changes that need to be encouraged, teachers need to be supported to make those changes through continuous professional development. And I think, the concept of teacher training has been ongoing in various schools to varying degrees. And I think now, to really introduce programs of continuous professional development where teachers are given the room and the space to experiment in their classrooms, to try new things, and then to go away and to have that observed in a low stakes manner by their peers or by leaders in the system, to be coached and guided individually as per their specific training needs. That ecosystem of continuous professional development needs to be set up in every school. We need to move away from this model of token teacher training, of resource people coming in and giving lectures to teachers, but rather really focusing on professional development inside classrooms, supporting teachers through coaching, observations, individual interactions between experienced teachers and less experienced teachers, or teachers who need support in particular areas, etc. So that kind of supportive professional development is a vital priority. I think schools now need to, if they're going to implement all these changes, they will absolutely need to engage their parents in a very direct manner. Often you want to introduce some positive change, but because parents are used to things being a particular way, teachers, principals, they get pushback from the parents. And I think, schools need to have active strategies to engage with parents, bring parents into the conversation, help parents understand and buy into the need for these changes, so that, they can support the change that the school is bringing. To give an example, traditional pre-primary curriculums have contained language curriculums which are full of grammar and that sort of old-fashioned way of teaching, and schools have recognized that that's not based on evidence, and they try to change that, and then the parents say, well, there's not enough written work in the copies, right? And they push back, and they don't like that. So schools are going to need to really engage with parents to help them understand the reasoning here. I think, on a more abstract level, there's an exploration that now needs to be done across the sector. And nobody knows exactly what this is going to look like. It's an evolving situation. But due to the pandemic, I think there is a case to be made for some kind of hybrid education being normalized, for some portion of teaching and learning to deliberately take place online, even in a post-pandemic world, even when it's not a necessity. There may be a desirability about it if it's managed in the right way. Different types of teaching and learning lend themselves to different scenarios. Sometimes, students might learn better at their own pace sitting at home. Sometimes technological tools can actually harness data from the students in a way that, isn't possible for a teacher without that technology. Teaching through particular types of online teaching platforms can automatically harness data as the lesson is ongoing. So you can envisage experimental models where, for example, core syllabus delivery or traditional chalk and talk moves online, and then all the time which is spent in the classroom is therefore focused on the activity-based learning and other types of learning, which require a social environment. So that school becomes a fully social environment, and other things can move online. So this is an experimental proposal, but I think it's not going away, and I think we should harness the benefits of technology where we can, and those experiments should take place. And then 10th, last but not the least, assessment reform is going to be fundamental to all of this. Because if the assessments are measuring for a particular way of teaching and learning, then whatever you're changing on the other side, you've still got to prepare kids for those exams. And many schools, my own included, we face this problem at the board exam level, that the board exams are absolutely not in our control, and parents are going to stop sending their kids to us if we don't prepare them for those board exams. So when class 9th hits, 9th to 12th, we are forced into this position where we have to prepare for those exams. But I think when schools, collectively start to recognize that this is a fundamental problem and make their voice heard, en masse in recognition, then I think boards will slowly wake up to the need to change. And beyond that, I personally, and in our system, we've decided to see no reason why, at the very least, up to class 8th, we can completely reform our assessment system internally, make assessments which are, rubric-based or which are, skills-based, which are not simply assessing for rote learning, so that then, that's a strong incentive for students and teachers and parents to engage in different methods of teaching and learning. So that's a very, very brief overview of high-level 10 points, which I think are key priorities. You know, one could go into so much detail about any one of these points. One could bring up 100 other points. If we had more time, we'd love to engage in such a discussion, but in the interest of time, I'll end it there. So thank you so much for giving me a patient hearing.
Perfect. Perfect. I think starting from learning gaps to assessment bit, which was the 10th, you covered a great spectrum, Roshan. And I won't ask any question, though I have few, but I will open up the house. If we have one or couple of questions with Mr. Roshan, you can throw in. Otherwise, we'll go to our next speaker. The way we will do about the question bit is that you'll have to show up a virtual show of hand. We'll help you unmute, and then you can ask your question or an observation. I know there are a lot of hows in what Roshan said, but then obviously we can take up those in the question and answer section as well. Okay. Anyway, so I think Roshan, we'll put those questions in the last for that matter, if people are still mulling over what you said for that matter to begin with. Very well articulated, I must say. And I think I also have Dr. Priyanka Mehita now joining in. So welcome. She was, in fact, I saw the message, she was in traffic and he finally could manage to be with us. We now go to our third speaker, Dr. Sunita Swaraj. Over to you.
Thank you, Gaurav or Gaurva. I mean,
like Ram and Rama, like you can say Gaurav, that's perfect.
So I think Meeta and Roshan have really spoken everything almost. You've hijacked what I really planned to talk. But then if you give me that opportunity, I would just like to pour my heart out here. Children are back in school, and I don't see much of a discomfort in them. Some 7 years back, I decided to withdraw uniform, and children coming in colors and wearing their, colorful t-shirts, lowers, and those sports shoes. That was, something which is so difficult in Delhi. But then I said, chalo karte hain, kyunki I was Fauji's daughter, and always was stuck with the tie and the belt, और वो इतना परेशान करता था मुझे. But I said, चल कुछ करते हैं. And I remember Mr. Manek telling me, Sunita, Delhi है. मैंने कहा, let's just try Delhi. So कोशिश किया, और हमारे पास 25% EWS बच्चे हैं. I'm sorry, मैं हिंदी में बात कर सकती हूँ? Yes, okay. So English करेंगे. So 25% EWS बच्चे हैं हमारे पास. And I thought, how do I handle it? Because those were the children whom we were really providing uniform. And we all came up, the student council came up, and they said, let's just have a student resource sharing drive. If I'm buying one t-shirt, I buy one more, put that in the basket, which is on all the floors. And on Saturdays, put them at the gate, and children come in, they take. And so we could manage this, and which is, I'll commend, myself that I could do it. This is how we come, applaud in our school. आवाज नहीं आती है जोर से ताकि दूसरी class disturb ना हो. So this is how we applaud. So that was something. And so the very first discomfort of that child is uniform पहनना. मेरा ये thought कहाँ से आया? Because I personally always believed that who left uniform to us? The Britishers. And we are like, since nursery, we've been training these children, uniform pehni hai, that's how your life is. So I could see those children very comfortable when they came back, and very happy, vibrant, because, colors bring in a lot of happiness. So that is something I'm so very happy with. Second is, our children don't sit in rows. They sit in crews. Crew in the sense, a class mein there are 4 crews with 8 children in every crew, and which is further divided into maybe 4 crews, 4 children in a crew. So what happens is, now the socio-emotional quotient that we keep talking about, when you're sitting with your friends, generally there's always a thought that you get distracted. But I personally feel that you learn better. So they sit in the crew, and there's so much that the children bring up in the classroom. They come in, they deliberate, discuss, and then they present. A teacher is a consultant out there. I call the teacher a consultant in the classroom. We can call them as a guide, mentor, facilitator, but then the teacher is a consultant. She moves to different fields, and whenever, and a moderator, you know, if the children are presenting, they if the classroom is going down, the teacher picks it up. This is really answering a lot of you know, discomforts that the children had. Now I would say that this happened in our online system as well. In online also, thanks to Zoom, that we had those breakout rooms, you know, wherein they could just go to their own crews and work on it, discuss, and we absolutely followed the same pattern online. So I don't see any discomfort out there, for the children, that, oh my God, we're getting back to school. Yes, there was one discomfort, screen se nikal ke or school mein jana. That was a little struggle, ma'am. We were working on the screen. You know, there were a lot of things which we used to upload. Now, how do we do it? We wanted them to carry a laptop, but I am still not geared up for that, because there's so much of BYOD policy, and there was the children. So we'll have to really bring in those collaborative models in the school, because I think somewhere we've forgotten that Sanjha Chulha wala scene in our country. We've always been a community wherein we came together, dukh sukh karte the. Punjab se jo yahan par log hain, they would really relate. In a village, there used to be a chulha in the center of the village, and in the evening, everybody used to come there and you know, make chapatis, and then kuch dukh sukh kiye aur वापस गए. और जो नहीं आता था उधर, उनको लोगों को लगता था, today why is this person not there from this house, and people used to go to that house, is everything okay? You know, we've been that kind of a community. Why is it that our child has to sit alone to, in fact, now in our school, I'll take this assessment thing from Roshan. In fact, Roshan, till grade 8 we don't have exams. So it's all about, you know, the teacher understanding what is it that the child has understood. So in fact, in the COVID times, we did not have those 3 hours exam for even 9, 10th, 11th, 12th. We really separated it into different pockets, different ways, so that we understand what the children have learned. So it's not difficult to really come out of that exam system. Till grade 8, for many years, we've not been having exam. I've been with Heritage for 9 years now. So, you know, if I look at it, my priorities that I had before COVID were there during the COVID, and still they exist. So I can't just talk about my 10 priorities like this. The priorities have been there, and I think the main priority that I've always been focusing on is a child being a good human being. ये जो syllabus है, ये हम अलग-अलग pockets में जो करा रहे हैं, I think I've been really focusing on interdisciplinary approach. I'll give you an example. अगर एक बच्चा, मैं किसी दुकान पे जाती हूँ और मैं कहती हूँ कि मुझे आप अंडे दे दो, तो वो ये नहीं बोलती ना, ये लो 10 रुपए, ये मैथ्स है, ये अंडे आप जो दे रहे हो ये एक यू नो साइंस है, ये आप जो मैं आपसे बात कर रही हूँ ये हिंदी है. We don't live like that. Why is it that our children have to live, learn in pockets? You're learning maths, you're learning English. So that is something I could just, totally work on till grade 3. Now my children only and only deal with literacy and numeracy. These are the 2 things that happen for children till grade 3. 4th onwards, we are completely moving to that we're blending all the subjects so that the child understands. So like, for example, in English, if there is Ramu, then Hindi में भी वो teacher Ramu लेके आती है, physics में भी Ramu लेके आती है. So a child is actually learning that story of this Ramu in all the subjects. That is how it has, this child just understands Ramu. Uski life mein physics kahan aa raha hai, kya ho raha hai. So fourth onwards, I'm not saying we've reached there, but somewhere we've tried to manage 50% of interdisciplinary approach. But I think I would like to really talk about the collaborative model, wherein, और collaborative model में आपको special furniture नहीं लाना है, आपके desk है उनको join करो, collaboration हो गया. So you don't have to really spend huge. I'm not talking about a school which is like very, if you come to my school is a very simple school. कोई बड़ा प्लस इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर नहीं है. वी आर इन दिल्ली, वैसे भी कोई फी हाइक नहीं है, तो वैसे ही गरीब हो गए हम लोग. सो you don't really need good, that plush infrastructure, but it's all about the intent. It is all about what you want to do. It is all about, और जो अभी एक नया वो आया, बच्चे चलाएं स्कूल. So that is something that we are wanting to do. We've been working on it. It has to be a student-led school so that the entire world can get good leaders. I think we all can see today what kind of leaders that the world has. So we'll all have to question ourselves. Do we really want these kind of leaders for our future generation? Or we need to create those leaders from the school. We need to really empower them to be vocal about what they're wanting to say. So I hope I did not take much of a time. ये कुछ चंद चीजें जो हमने कहा कि जो हम करते हैं और करना चाहते हैं, और चाहती हूँ कि हर बच्चे के साथ ये काम हो, और हम सब कर रहे हैं अपनी अपनी जितना हमारी मंशा बहुत अच्छी है, और जितना हमें आता है सब इंसान की अलग अलग सीख रही है. मेरा अलग सीख रही है. I've been from a केंद्रीय विद्यालय गवर्नमेंट स्कूल. फौज से एडवर्सिटी को कैसे हैंडल करना है वो सीखा, तो अब ये कुछ कर पाई मैं हैंडल. So we all are putting in our efforts, and as a community we're going to really rock. All we need to understand is we are abundant. Let's just use that abundance that we all have. So thank you so much, Gaurav, for having me.
Wonderful, fabulous. आज मतलब एक अच्छा कहते हैं ना, पैशनेट एजुकेटर भी सभी हम लोग पैशनेट हैं यहाँ पर, बट आप थोड़ी सी मुझे लगा साथ में भावुक भी हो रही थी. आपको बहुत सारी चीजें कहना चाहती थी आप. बट हैविंग सेड दिस, द अंडरलाइनिंग प्रिंसिपल एज यू मेंशन्ड इज कि कुछ भी ऐसे ड्रामेटिकली चेंज नहीं हुआ. कोविड से पहले भी वही था, कोविड के दौरान भी वो रहा, और अब आगे भी आप वो कर रहे हैं कि एक अच्छा नागरिक बनाने के लिए कोविड ज्यादा चेंज नहीं हो सकता चीजों का. चलिए, वंडरफुल, थैंक यू वेरी मच. बहुत अच्छा लगा आपसे सुन के. और यस, आई मूव ऑन टू माय फोर्थ स्पीकर. अभी उससे बिफोर, पहले मैं जाऊं वहां पर, बिफोर आई गो देयर, एनी क्वेश्चन फॉर डॉक्टर सुनीता? अगर इफ वी हैव एनी क्वेश्चन फॉर डॉक्टर सुनीता, वी कैन टेक इट अप. एनी ऑब्जर्वेशन प्लीज? ओके, तो I move on to Dr. Priyanka Mehita. She is, obviously, I've given her introduction in the beginning, but I will say it all over again. She's the Director Principal at the Sarvottam International School in Noida. Over to you for your top 10 priorities. And just for the benefit of all of you, we do not have to stick to the exhaustive number of 10. It can be 5, can be 3. 10 is the maximum. Okay, just that.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And am I audible, clearly audible? Thank you. And it's, I would say, an advantage and disadvantage to fall in line with, Roshan and Sunita and everybody. I've always been a great fan of both of them, I should say here. So thank you so much for putting up on the panel today, Gaurav. It's great to be back on IPN, and I think that's after a long time. Priorities, I would say that as an educationist, the priorities have not really changed. As a mentor, they have, because I feel that more or less the content part. I understood a great thing, by the way, during the COVID, when there was an announcement made by the CBSE that 50% syllabus was reduced, both at level grade 10 and 12, gave me a great insight that, well, was that not important to be taught, or could it be taught somewhere else, sometime else? So a great insight came in, and I'm quite aligned with what Roshan and Sunita said, that it's quite up to us what we're doing in the classrooms. And it's time that we understand what was given to us as a system in education, and what education can be redefined as. I feel today, after 2 years of whatever we've been through, our children need to focus more on wellness. And whether I don't know if I'm sounding a little repetitive after some of the speakers have spoken, but this is very close to my heart, where I feel that if a child is happy, the child is going to learn. So a happy child, whether is at, a child smiling and giggling is not happy to my definition. A happy child is somebody who is still curious to know more, wants to come back to, asking more questions, wants to know how to connect what she's learned in the classroom to what is going around in the world. And I totally agree with Sunita when it comes to integrated learning. Yes, we cannot be teaching children in parts. And I think last 2 years, to me, have been great teachers. We've been able to bring the first part of the COVID, we went on to do the mistakes that everybody did. We were scouting for the best platforms. We were trying to duplicate what we did in the classrooms onto the online. Only later when we understood, well, that this is a different platform altogether. You are not looking at more than a 10-inch child on the screen, and sometimes not even visible. You don't even know what's happening behind the screen. So what was more important for me now was to help children get prepared for any such situation that comes from here on. Let's build children on integrity. Let's build children on moralities. Let's build children on character. Let's build them, very rightly said, literacy in the real sense. I would want the kids to understand that come what may, a book becomes an aid to learning. It's not the world of learning in all its great sense. Of course, go back to the book to see if you have understood. Go back to the book to check if you understood and if your points are in order. But let's talk about what learning is all about and how it is all around us. So that was the changing point in how we looked at our curriculums. And we started to put in those little places where children had the time to interact, to have fun. And I would not want that to end by any means. I want that hybrid model to be understood in the right sense, and to continue to take away the mundane, repetitive work that either a teacher does or a child does. So we can definitely redo our assessments. We could keep the assessments on to times when children can do them easily at their own pace. Differentiated assessment was something that we could bring in a great manner. And it was so successful. We had happy parents and happy children around. And I feel that that much of time, which has been taken away from the assessment, time, 1 hour periodic, every Monday test, every Tuesday test, and those 6 days of tests should be brought back into the classroom where children can do more. They should be talking to each other and working on more things. Post-COVID, I would also want to concentrate on helping children understand how to deal with situations like this. I think counseling would come up in a big manner and is on a priority list with me, wherein I want teachers to understand how to handle, it will be wrong for me to say cases in the classrooms, which we earlier used to say, but I would want teachers to talk about what children want to know more about. Beyond the books, beyond the curriculum is what we're looking at. So I'm more towards, I know everybody's talked about the assessment part and how we can go back and connect with teachers. I'm sure there's a lot of anxiety that has happened with children and parents as well as teachers. What most of us are missing is that, well, the teacher was online, the teacher was working, but this wasn't the natural way a teacher was trained to teach. So there's a lot that has stressed out a teacher or she's turned into an anxious person. I see a little anxiety when children are now coming back to school. I see that little anxiety there in each teacher, where, they're trying to fall into those routines. 7:20 school, ma'am, 7:20 school. I said, well, try and come back to your routines. So it's those little things that have started to matter a little with them, but they've also understood things can happen in some other manner too. You could have, you can now manage an evening connect with your children who need help. You can manage a little evening connect class or a weekend class with children with special needs. We could not have thought of those times earlier, but now we can. So I guess the technology, I think we learn a lot when it's the times are adverse, and this has helped us learn and develop systems where a lot of connectivity can happen, a lot of collaboration can happen. One great thing I want to share here is that I'm a new school, new, about 7 years now. So we were planning to get into some foreign collaboration. So earlier it was slightly difficult for us to understand how to get into those, schools to come to us and our children to go there. Well, the online thing opened the world to my kids. And it's as easy as being over a Skype session and connecting to the world outside. Children understood time zones like never before. So if that can open in the true sense, the world can open, I really think not much adverse has happened to what we're thinking could have happened. Learning gaps, yes, but learning gaps can be covered. Again, I'll go back to the point that, well, if 50% can go away, there aren't any learning gaps there anymore. It's up to us how we manage our time and how much of content do we really want to go with the classes. You see, in most of the schools, we have these publisher books telling us how many chapters to be taught. Can we just relook at them? Can we think of what exactly is required in the classroom and help children manage a lot of their time into things that are helpful to them, for them to grow within? Mental growth, social growth, emotional quotients, technological quotients, together shall collaborate to bring in great education in the classes, is what I feel. So thank you so much. And I hope that makes some sense to many who are here. Thanks, Gaurav, for helping me to speak a few words.
A lot of sense,
Thank you.
a lot of sense. In fact, I was sharing with everyone before even you have joined, nothing to do with what you said, but you have turned an author as well. And I was saying that your book is doing fabulously well. And we will love to get the copy of it in the chat. If you can send us, we'll possibly circulate it further. But thank you very much. I think very exhaustive, very, very exhaustive. You tried covering everything more or less. I think you're resonating with Roshan and what Sunita is saying. And I mean, like-minded people think alike, if I may say, right? But having said this, any question for Dr. Priyanka Mehita, anyone in the audience? However, obviously she'll be around and we can take up the question at the last as well. Before I go to the final speaker, okay, so I go to the final speaker, which is Ms. Palak Tiwari Gaikwad. Over to you.
Thank you, Gaurav, for inviting me. I'm overwhelmed listening to such great speakers, and they have covered almost all the points. But as a leader, I think that we all have different personalities and how we go about it. So sitting in Jabalpur, central India, I think that as a leader, my first priority for my schools is to share my new mission and new vision, that I and my, team of, leaders have finalized, or, we've decided upon to work on it with our ecosystem. Even my janitor should know that what are we working for, and, what is going to lead. So, as Meeta ma'am said, that, we have to work, on the VUCA ready, we need to make the entire ecosystem ready for that. What will happen? I think this will create, a skill that is very important for 21st century learners, that we will have T-shaped individuals, which, who will be lifelong learners, ready for teamwork, collaboration. These are the terms that I've been hearing the entire session. But how is it going to happen if we don't even share our mission and vision with the, near and dear ones whom we are working, 7 to 8 hours regularly? So we will have a smarter planet, our generation and the younger, the future generation will be more empathetic towards each other, analytic thinkers and problem solvers, as we've been using these terms. Second thing that I prioritize is realize and recognize the objectives, the purpose, not only for the organization, but also for all the stakeholders. Because when we talk about parents seeing their child's education or child's school, it's not the same way the principal or the directors are seeing. This is my way to look at it, that parent cannot say that it's okay, let's just concentrate on the skills, on the 21st century skills, because we have people, at least my school have children who are from all walks of life, and they need to see their economical conditions as well. So I cannot change the entire system so easily and just say that assessments cannot happen, it's okay. I understand the concept that Sunita ma'am shared. I really, because I am also interdisciplinary, we are following that curriculum till standard 8. And if, as she said, that Ramu is one character and plays vital role in all the subjects. It's the same way that we do till 8th standard. But I am facing a huge problem when I look at it in the 9th standard, because again, the 10th board. So parents are not ready to use any other book than NCERT. So now I am, working out with a curriculum making company so that I can have, NCERT books with some kind of workbooks, that creates interdisciplinary, education. So these are the kind of problems we face. And I think that until unless we share the objectives behind why are we educating, even if it is of one chapter, I think we will not be able to push ourselves. And with this, I think we also make our children ready to navigate through uncertainties. Third thing that I prioritize is acknowledge the unfinished tasks. I will not call them loss, because as I think all the speakers said, that if we had a loss on academics, we learned something better. So I think these are unfinished tasks that that were left, and having objectives placed, we'll be able to create better recovery plans. As a management person, I also think unfinished tasks comes for economical sector also to give education. So I think the education should be for everybody, and those schools have been at economical loss, but we have to keep a check that we keep, we have minimum, fees for, so that we can educate everybody and the society grows. This will, I think, next thing that I prioritize is redesigning the home school connect that we used to call. This will strengthen the bond between parent and the school. Also, I feel that every parent cannot give a lot of time. So we must give some qualitative planned things that should be done at home to recover the tasks that have been unfinished. So I think joining hands with parents and being very planned about it, knowing the outcomes, will give us a better platform. Yes, hybrid learning, whether in the brick or mortar arrangement or in the virtual arrangement, needs to be focused. And I think we all have come to QR codes and IPSATE assessments. So I will not focus on that much, but I think that IPSATE assessments will definitely give better results for physiological or safety, belongingness, self-esteem of the child, self-actualization, because these are the things which will lead a child with so many ups and downs in these 2 years to come up to their full potential. And it won't happen overnight. It will take time, but I am sure using such tools and techniques and pedagogies, I think we'll be able to make it. We've been talking about content and competency. So academics will not remain only, till the books. It will definitely, I'm very sure everybody across the country is working, to know and understand what best way they can teach, the kids. So the education will be more learner centric, and we will be able to focus on the sustainable developmental goals, I think. More attention or more emphasis on the futuristic domains, as Roshan had spoken about it. What are we doing about character building? So I think, involving children in community services will enhance to ethical thinking. And I think everything is interdependent. So, if we educate them with project-based learning or problem solving or problem-based learning, I think research skills, creation, and we need to understand that creation and innovation is going to be different. Also, we're going to deal with problem of plenty. There are people who have a lot and are not able to navigate themselves, either to share or either to create, either to innovate. So I think we need to channelize the entire, system of education to project-based or problem-based learning, which will, or having some internships or incubation centers to develop such things. A best use of technology so that teachers, I think somebody has already spoken about it, that teachers don't waste a lot of time in developing the content. Rather, they are more focused on how to, how should they enhance learning for each child. I think the last thing that I would focus on is we all should keep visiting and revisiting the practices that we are putting up right now, so that we don't, after 10 years, we don't realize that, this should have changed. Now is the time when we can create a change, and we are doing it. I think if we keep on revisiting, this chapter will be well written. So thank you so much, Gaurav, for giving me an opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful. I know it is difficult to be the last speaker because more or less every point was somewhere or the other covered, but I think you did present your contextual challenges and how you're, as a leader, embracing them. So wonderfully well articulated. We are already at 6:03, but certainly we can take out some time for a few observations and questions. Let's take few questions from the audience or all our leaders who are with us. No matter if you do not have a question, if you even have an observation or what you are doing at your level, we'll be very, very glad to hear from you as well. Okay, so time for a couple of questions and few observations, and then we will say thank you to each one of you. So you'll have to put up a virtual show of hand. You know that I know, physical schools have now started. Everyone is little jaded by the end of the day. I know that. So we won't keep you waiting for too long. But if you have an observation, आप क्या कर रहे हैं? आपका क्या view है? Anything you want to add to this conversation? Right, because we always begin with this as a opening remark that we want to have your views also heard at the last of this dialogue. Anyone? Any question from any of our panelists, if you have? With
Gaurav, I just wanted to share something. Sure, please. It came to us as a pleasant surprise when we were about to plan the reopening of the schools. We started talking to our parents to find out how they wanted the school, because amongst everything, there was one huge apprehension of how the children are going to face any infection whatsoever, because school being a public place, there were many questions on the mind regarding how are they going to, the little ones with masks and water bottles and sanitizers and all. But something that came to me as a very encouraging factor was that parents were so very happy. I think they realized the value of being at school more than anyone else. So they were the ones who started telling us that, ma'am, the children haven't had time to be physically active. They haven't had they were together with their friends doing various virtual collaborative works, but then they never got the chance to be with their friends. So I guess the only thing that they want to do is be with their friends for some time. So that was great. And it has also led us to understand that, well, there's no hurry to teach the content right now. We can all wait and let children be themselves for a while we work at what we want to really, really teach them.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm father to 2 young daughters. I was very, very keen to send my girls away for that matter. But at the end of the day, were they very keen about it? That is something time will tell us for that matter. But having said this, I think physical setup can never ever be replicated or whatever you call it in terms of the virtual scenario. But I think Roshan very aptly pointed out that it's a wonderful world we have to now converge into, which is a hybrid for that matter, right? How do we make use of it? And I, as an entrepreneur, have seen the utility of it so greatly. As I said, I'm sure educators would have also seen that utility. Any question? But it's not about me right now. It's about all of you.
We've met more people. We've met more people online than any time before. We
collaborated more. I think we collaborated more. We met more people. Everything, I think I did more compared to the physical setup. Absolutely no two ways about it. Anyone who has any observation? None. So then it is time to say thank. अच्छा आपके पास है? हाँ तो virtual show of hand नहीं उठाया आपने मैम. आप ऐसे दिखा रहे हो मुझे. ऐसे रेज करते हैं. देखिए. Yes. देखिए वो वहाँ पे मेरे वहाँ पर. Anyway, सोनिया जी. अपना परिचय दीजिए थोड़ा सा ब्रीफ परिचय और फिर क्वेश्चन पूछिए ऑब्जर्वेशन.
Good evening everyone. This is Sonia Sehgal and I'm working in Little Kingdom School since 17 years. So sir, like whatever the conversation and whatever the heads and everybody was going through, so I was feeling so privileged, so proud to be a part of Little Kingdom School, wherein we are taking care of all the things which have been discussed here, like whether it is prior COVID or it is in.
आपने जोश में म्यूट कर लिया अपने आप.
नहीं, it was on my side only.
Unmute कर लिया.
Actually, sir, I'm feeling so. We are being trained under the leadership of Ma'am Palak. Like we are being, myself and my educators, like we are being through these, whether we are talking about the brick and mortar arrangements, whether we are talking about the virtual arrangements, wherein we are being dealing with all the cases. Like in our school, we take, as ma'am said, the parents are an important stakeholders, wherein we take care of their queries, what they must be going on, because everybody is not equally trained as we are. Like for the, if I'm talking about the technology part and all. So we are that school which are being provided the trainings, which we give the trainings to the parents as well under the able guidance of Ma'am Palak. And whatever the domains, as Ma'am Sunita was talking about, inter-transdisciplinary approach, wherein we are following that, Ma'am Sunita, since NNLP 1, that means from playgroup itself. And then we gradually move on to the progression from playgroup to grade 10th, 9th, 8th and everything. So I was so blessed and I was so overwhelming to hear all these things that we are actually catering to, sir. Thank you so much.
आप पैशनेट टीचर हैं, ये तो मैं जरूर बोल सकता हूँ, क्योंकि 7 बजे भी आपके अंदर जो एनर्जी है वो बहुत लोगों के अंदर नहीं होती है. एंड आई एम श्योर पलक आपकी फाउंडर यहाँ पर हैं, तो इनका अप्रेजल तो जरूर बनता है. देखिएगा आप जरा इसका. तो हैविंग सेड दिस, थैंक यू वेरी मच एवरीबॉडी. It was a pleasure hosting all the speakers. Yes, मैं भी ऐसे ही करूँगा, but थोड़ा सा different लग रहा है. But thank you, Roshan. Thank you very much for your valuable presence. Thank you, Sunita ji. Thank you, Priyanka. Seeing you after a long time. Book का link भेज दिया है Sunita ने. I'm sure all of you, at least I'm going to buy it after this session for sure. Thank you, Palak. Thank you, Meeta ji. I think Meeta ji is possibly she has left the session, but nevertheless, and everyone who had joined in the session. Thank you very much for your valuable time. We hope to see you soon. Take care and stay safe.
All the best, everyone. And thank you so much, Gaurav. It was great being here.
Pleasure. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gaurav. Thank you, everyone.